Welcome to the Healthy Skin Show with Jennifer Fugo, where we're flipping everything you've been told about your chronic skin issues upside down and connecting you with alternative solutions your dermatologist never told you about.
Welcome back to episode number 99 of the Healthy Skin Show. In this episode, I wanted to talk about vitamin D and why it's not just important in general for your health, but why it may actually be really important for your skin. And can you use it topically? We talk a lot about how the skin in and of itself is very nutrient hungry. And what's equally interesting to me with the more research that I do is how the skin can really truly absorb certain nutrients. And one of those nutrients includes vitamin D. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh my goodness, Jen, I know that my skin can make vitamin D when I'm out in the sun. Yes, we know that, but I'm actually talking about supplemental vitamin D. And there are different forms of vitamin D out there. So I thought let's do a brief overview of vitamin D, where you can find it in food, and can it be helpful to use it topically. And I'm going to talk about some very specific research on skin conditions like psoriasis, seborrheic dermatitis, also known as dandruff, and eczema. The first thing you need to know about vitamin D that you might not realize is that it is a steroid hormone. That's right, when you are out in the sun without sunscreen on, your skin, which is exposed to the sun, is producing a steroid hormone. And it actually serves a purpose in helping to regulate cellular function within the cells. And we know from clinical research that vitamin D has the capacity to inhibit cellular proliferation. It can decrease pro-inflammatory cytokines. It can increase antimicrobial peptide expression. It can support barrier integrity and permeability. And it also has the capacity to increase the synthesis of ceramides, which are important for hydration in your skin. As far as the nutrient vitamin D is concerned, it's a fat-soluble nutrient. That means that it has to be absorbed with fats in your diet. And it requires certain things in order to be properly broken down and absorbed. That include lipases, which are one of the 3 types of digestive enzymes, and bile. So if you don't have your gallbladder, that can be a major problem for absorbing vitamin D. Speaking of food sources, there's actually 2 types of vitamin D that you can consume. There's vitamin D2 and vitamin D3. So vitamin D2 is predominantly found in vegetarian sources like mushrooms, where vitamin D3 is found in predominantly animal foods. So we're looking at fatty fish like salmon, egg yolks, liver, cod liver oil, ghee. You guys know I love ghee for its butyrate content, and sardines. Those are some great options or sources for vitamin D in your diet. Now, your skin, on the other hand, when it's exposed to sunlight, will produce vitamin D3. That said, it doesn't matter whether your skin produces it from sunlight exposure or you absorb vitamin D through your diet. Your body can't just utilize those forms right off the bat. Those forms of vitamin D have to be sent to the liver in order to be converted to another form that's then moved to the kidneys where it is activated. And now it can be used within your cells. I point this out for a couple of reasons. Number one, your genes can influence your body's ability to make these conversions because genes dictate the enzymes that are used to do this whole thing of converting vitamin D to its active form. And it also requires that your liver be in a very healthy state. We know that those with psoriasis have an increased risk of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So that may also impact your body's ability to make that conversion. Another piece of the puzzle is that if you have underlying hidden infections, that can also be a factor here. And you might want to talk to your doctor or a nutritionist before starting a vitamin D supplement regimen in the event that you're actually dealing with something called the cell danger response, where the body suppresses vitamin D levels on purpose in an effort to try to protect you. As far as where you really want to see your vitamin D level hit, it really depends on what source you look at. Most sources agree that below 20 is considered an outright deficiency. 21 to 29 is considered insufficiency. So above 30 is considered an appropriate level of vitamin D in your blood. However, from an integrative or optimal perspective, we like to see vitamin D a little bit higher, usually between 50 to 80. In the majority of my chronic skin rash clients, no matter whether they have seborrheic dermatitis, eczema, psoriasis, etc., the majority have deficient levels of vitamin D. And there is research to support that those with psoriasis, it's actually pretty common to have low levels of vitamin D compared to the general population. And what's more interesting is that women tend to have lower levels than men who have psoriasis. And we also see a higher rate of low vitamin D in those with psoriatic arthritis. Now that we've established this whole landscape about vitamin D, let's talk about a few instances where vitamin D supplementation in some way, shape, or form, whether it's oral or topical, was actually helpful in certain skin conditions. In one study that looked at moderately severe plaque psoriasis, now this is back in 1995, but there have been other studies since. Researchers worked with 277 individuals over an 8-week period. The participants applied a synthetic vitamin D3 analog called calcipotriene. The results indicated that 70% of the participants showed a 75% or better improvement in their psoriasis compared to the control group. In another small study of 10 individuals with seborrheic dermatitis, topical vitamin D triggered, quote, a major improvement or even complete clearance after an average of 8 days, end quote. And last but not least, another study that I found looking at chronic hand eczema sufferers, researchers tested 2 different treatment plans on 13 individuals. They tested calcipotriol, which is that vitamin D analog that I already mentioned, versus a steroid cream called desoximetazone. What they ultimately found was that the topical calcipotriol was just as effective as the steroid cream. In fact, 70% reported an improvement of over 75%. That is some pretty neat information, right? Here's the thing. If you're considering topical application of vitamin D, you definitely need to decrease the amount of oral vitamin D that you're taking because research shows that topical application of vitamin D will impact your serum levels. And ideally, you should have your serum levels rechecked about every 6 to 8 weeks if you are supplementing through the skin topically or orally at higher doses. If you decide to supplement orally, I always recommend formulas to clients that include the more potent form of vitamin D, which is vitamin D3 mixed with vitamin K2 to help support calcium absorption to the bones because vitamin D and K have a synergistic relationship and support one another so that calcium does not end up getting lodged in your arteries and calcifying other tissues. Oral supplementation dosages really depend on how much you have available in your serum now. Before you begin supplementing with vitamin D, I highly recommend that you get your vitamin D level checked first. And again, double check with a practitioner that you are not in that cell danger response where vitamin D supplementation may not actually be ideal. And since we are talking about both topical and oral supplementation, ultimately you need to discuss that with your doctor or practitioner first before you take any action, since your situation may not be the same as someone else's. Depending on what medications you're taking and other conditions that you have, you always want to double check first that it's safe for you. It's my hope that this conversation around vitamin D and the importance of it and how you can incorporate it into your protocol, whether it be oral or topical, is helpful so that you can start asking better questions of your doctors and your practitioner team. If you have any questions or comments about this whole vitamin D thing, head on over to skinterrupt.com/099 to leave your thoughts there. I'll also include all of the research that I've cited here in the show notes. And you know what to do. Head on over to your podcast platform of choice, rate and review the show. I would deeply, deeply appreciate it. And of course, hit subscribe. That way, the next episode lands on your mobile device without you having to do a thing. And last but not least, make sure to share this episode with someone you know who could use this information. How neat is it that someone could potentially utilize vitamin D topically to help reduce their symptoms in psoriasis, eczema, and even seborrheic dermatitis? And I promise you, we will dive into this topic deeper in upcoming episodes. So stay tuned. In the meantime, I appreciate you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.